what is Trump doing? He's China's not playing ball the way Trump wants. They're evading him at every turn. He's trying to do this tariff war, and China's not blinking. Why do you think China isn't? I mean, you've mentioned Scott Bessent. He doesn't like China. He doesn't like anybody. What is the strategy here, and how is this? I guess what's worst case scenario and what's best case scenario in your view with China?
Well, first of all, I think the view what people in the West have about China is utterly wrong. I mean, they say that China is aggressive, that China is imperialistic, that China wants to attack the dollar, that China wants to replace the United States as the dominant superpower. None of these things is true. China is a country which has a history of 5,000 years. They are not imperialistic. They're not trying to proselytize. They're not trying to impose their ideology on other countries, unlike the West, who's trying to go and teach Western democracy everywhere with no result, as we can see in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all the many other cases where this was attempted. What China wants to do is China wants to rejuvenate the Chinese nation or civilization, because they think that they should never again suffer what they call the century of humiliation, which was basically, from the 19th century, the Opium Wars, the different occupations by many foreign countries, Japan, Russia, France, Great Britain, Germany. Many countries have taken parts of Chinese territory. And, when China basically went through the process of getting rid of the previous dynasties, going to the new republic with Sun Yat-sen, through a period of civil war, and then finally establishing the People's Republic of China. That was difficult in the beginning because they came out of an incredible poverty. They had the Cultural Revolution. But when Deng Xiaoping ended that with the reform and opening up policy, they embarked on a completely different course, applying actually what you could call the American system of economy, by putting the common good in the center, by putting a lot of control in the hands of the government. And they started to develop from an extremely poor country to become the largest economic miracle in history ever. I mean, if anybody of your viewers doesn't believe me, go there, go to China, look at it. There are hundreds of cities which are more modern than any city in the United States or in Europe. And they have applied a method of economics which should be studied. I mean, China has bypassed the United States probably since several years in terms of science, technology. The Australian think tank called Australian Strategic Policy Institute, SP, they have a web page, and on that web page you can find something which they call the technology tracker. And there they report that in all the most advanced sciences, China is leading of 63 in 57 categories. The most patents by far are made in China. They are putting out every year millions of new engineers, science students. They are top in all the areas of fusion, thermonuclear fusion research. They want to have a commercial fusion reactor online, I think around the latest by 2035. They are most advanced in space technology. And that is not because they don't want to replace the United States. They just want to have a strong China. And they have started to reach out to other countries by offering the Belt and Road Initiative, whereby they give countries, especially of the global south, the possibility to overcome their status as colonial countries by, developing infrastructure. China is putting in, roads, highways, railways, fast railways, industrial parks. So these countries start to prosper and see a way of overcoming their condition as a raw material exporter by developing the industrial chain in their own countries with the aim to achieve a middle level income status fairly soon. And that way, China has made many friends. I think the United States has gone another way. They have built more than 800 military bases around the world. Yeah, and they offer security, in quote, training people for security, military maneuvers, but not offering infrastructure, not offering development. So,
Yeah.
what do these countries say? Who is our better friend? Is it the United States offering military bases but no development? Or is it China, which has only one military base in, I think, in somewhere at the Horn of Africa, Eritrea or Somalia, one of these two countries? One,
Hmm.
but they have gained a lot of friends, and they have developed now a new system of economics, the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, many other organizations, ASEAN and Eurasian Economic Union. All of these organizations are trying to build a different economic system, and they are not trying to create a bloc opposed to NATO or to the West. They on the other side say, we are open. If you cooperate, we welcome you. And I think this is so unbelievably stupid, because all it would require to avoid World War III is if the United States and European countries would say, okay, let's cooperate. There are many problems we have to solve together: poverty, the migration issue, rather than building a wall and using Frontex, that's the paramilitary organization the EU uses to drive refugees back into the Mediterranean, having them drown, and it's a terrible thing. Rather than doing such a barbaric thing, if we would join hands with the BRICS countries, we could develop Latin America. The United States, for example, rather than saying we have to drive China out of the Western Hemisphere, which is now what the policy is, if they would say China is building a bi-oceanic railway from the Atlantic to the Pacific through Brazil, uh, and we cooperate because there are many other infrastructure lines which are needed to develop Latin America as a continent, and we cooperate because this is a big job. It needs decades to finish. That way, the migrants would not come. They would stay in their country, because who wants to leave home? Nobody wants to leave home and end up in a sort of concentration camp, surrounded by barbed wire, being unwelcomed in a country you are not familiar with. If we would turn around and go in the direction of cooperation with the BRICS countries, all the problems could be solved. Now, I know this goes completely against the present philosophy, but I think intellectuals and professors and think tank people, they should start a dialogue if there is not a better way to approach these present problems of the world than what is being pursued right now.
Yeah. China has really, like, as you mentioned during this conversation, China has really focused on China first, and it's worked. Their China first policy has worked for them. And America has instead 800 bases around the world and is not at all focused on the America first policy that Americans actually voted for when they voted in Donald Trump. And I think China really showcases what can be done when you focus on uh, a nation first policy, your nation first policy. They've really pulled that off and really showcased it. And it's a shame that we're not learning from it. I hope we do. I hope we move forward learning from that. And then I hope that we realize it's best to cooperate with other countries, but focus on building your own prosperity rather than trying to undercut the others in order to prevent their rise, their climb, or their own prosperity. It's a system that's not working for us. It hasn't been working for us. Helga Zepp-LaRouche, thank you so much for being here. We do have the link to the Schiller Institute. We also have the link to the Bering Strait Tunnel Project summit that you had yesterday, the international roundtable that you held yesterday, that conversation. Tell us about how people can learn more. I know you've got a daily alert so that people can really stay informed every day? Tell us about that.
Well, my late husband invented that more than 50 years ago, uh, by developing an independent news agency with lots of analysts who have studied his specific method of analysis. And we started to produce something we call the daily briefing, which is a very digested evaluation of strategic changes from yesterday to today
Mm.
in all fields, economic, strategic questions, science, cultural questions. And, there are many people who have stated that this is the best newsletter. For example, Ray McGovern, Scott Ritter, uh, Colonel Wilkerson, Larry Johnson. These are all former intelligence officers. And they all said that this is the best brief they know. Ray McGovern, for example, said he reads that in the morning before he takes breakfast, and he was the briefer of 3 American presidents. And he says this is the quality of that briefing. So I would, really urge people to subscribe to it. It's very inexpensive, because, you want to be informed. You want to be a state citizen. Next year, the United States has its 250th anniversary. And, I think that would be a wonderful opportunity to go back to the spirit of the American Revolution, of which the Americans should be very, very proud, because the American Revolution and the War of Independence was the first anti-colonial war in history. And this is a proud tradition, which, if it would be revived, would do so much good for the whole world. If the United States would go back to the ideals of the founding fathers, of Benjamin Franklin, of the American system of economy, of Alexander Hamilton, of the foreign policy of John Quincy Adams, that it is not the job of the United States to go abroad and chase monsters, but to form alliances and partnerships with other countries. There are so many important ideas. But in order to appreciate these ideas, you have to be in the real world today. And you have to know, you have to judge things. You have to be competent in economics, in foreign policy, in social policy. And all of that will be accessible to you when you study our newsletter, because that's the whole purpose of it. So thank you very much that you let me say these things. But I really think to be an informed state citizen and to have a functioning republic are part of the same problem. So that's why I think people really must step forward right now, because the whole world depends on where the United States goes. If the United States becomes a force, or is a force of good in the world, every problem can be solved. If the United States loses its way, everything will go wrong. So you can do a lot. And by you, I mean all of you listeners.
Yes. Helga, thank you again for being here. We do have the link down below to the newsletter, the audio podcast. And like I mentioned, the conference from yesterday is talking about the Bering Strait and how important that could be. So thank you again for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I enjoy this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.